Hey everybody, it's Madison Gesiotto Gilbert, and we're back for another episode of the Republican Rundown. I'm back with Tommy and Anna, and we have so much to talk about this week. Of course, starting with costs. It doesn't matter what you're doing, where you're going, who you are in this country. Everything is costing us more. Savings are down, credit card debt is up, and we have Bidenflation to thank for that. Tommy, Anna, what are you guys seeing when it comes to these exorbitant cost numbers all across the country?
Well, I think part of it is that they're so widespread. It's literally everything. I mean, we're talking about food, rent, utilities, things that you can't afford not to buy. And I think that's one of the big things that Biden keeps on missing in this. He keeps on going out there trying to claim costs are lower, but the things that you have to buy, the things that you cannot give up, a place to live, keeping your house on, food on the table, those are the things that are skyrocketing some of the most in price. And so I think families are feeling it really hard because they can't substitute anything. They can't not buy food. And that's why Bidenomics, I think, is hitting families so hard, and why we see these approval ratings for the economy really down across the board.
Yeah, I know that we have a tweet actually talking about kind of all of the different ways that inflation is hitting people. And it's a really great snapshot into the fact that Americans are dealing with the impact of Bidenomics every single day, right? Every time that they go to the grocery store, like Tommy, you said, every time that they fill up their gas pump, on holidays like Valentine's, trying to get gifts for their loved ones, right? It's really sad to see. Meanwhile, you have Biden gaslighting the American people, trying to rewrite history on this when everyday families know that real wages are down. They have less purchasing power with their paychecks, and they're able to not provide for their families that in the same way that they would have expected before Biden took office. And it's real sad to see. And it's really a shame that he continues to lie to the American people and gaslight their everyday reality on this.
Yeah, and Anna, you bring up Valentine's Day. Obviously, we all, or some of us, just celebrated last week. For those of you who did not, take a look at these numbers. Absolutely stunning when you think about it. Since Biden took office, the cost of candy up 23.2%, flowers up 12.6%, jewelry up 12.8%, stationery gift wrap almost 26% up since Biden took office. Movie tickets up over 18%. And finally, romantic dinners, which my husband and I enjoyed one last week for Valentine's Day, up 21%. And it's not just, of course, Valentine's dinners. You go out to dinner any time since Biden took office, and you're seeing those costs continue to rise. You're seeing the costs rise at the grocery store. We're seeing that car insurance up over 20%, vet bills up. Almost anything that is a necessity of life has gone up. And it's super frustrating because, as I say every single week, it did not have to be this way. It didn't have to be this way. Things did not have to be the way Biden and the Democrats made them. And we're all facing the realities of their bad decisions. Tommy, do you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this is after many holidays of costs going up. You see Christmas costs going up, Thanksgiving costs going up, 4th of July costs going up, year after year after year, people paying these prices. And I think not having to be this way is such a key point, because when you compare the economy under President Trump versus the economy under Biden, you see the difference when it comes to inflation. The average year-over-year inflation rate under President Trump was 1.9%. So far under Joe Biden, it's 5.7%. And the thing about these percentages, it's that percentage increase on top of that percentage increase. They compound on each other, meaning that we're paying these higher prices and we're seeing these increases again and again and again and again. And even liberal economists told Joe Biden when he passed that $1.9 trillion back in March 2021 that this would fuel inflation. They warned him. They said, don't do this. And he did it anyway. It really didn't have to be this way. And I think the prices that we're paying right now are the tax that Biden is inflicting on families so that he can send money to communist China, so he can send money to his pals, so we can waste taxpayer money. It didn't have to be this way. And it's such a shame. And we have to make sure that he's a one-term president to fix it.
We continue to send money all across the world. Our debt and our deficit have not gone down. In the past 4 years, the household debt has spiked $2.9 trillion in this country. Savings are down, credit card debt's up, wages are down, and inflation continues to be high. And we look at those specific numbers we talked about earlier when you're talking about the day-to-day expenses up significantly year over year. And people are struggling as a result of it. And I think that's the reason why when you look towards November, we're going to see independents that maybe wouldn't have or did not vote Republican in 2022 come to the Republican Party and vote alongside us. We do not have to agree on every issue, but when it comes to the economy, the majority of Americans trust Republicans with the economy more than Democrats. And I believe that ultimately will be one of the tipping points as to why more people vote Republican this year.
Yeah, it's why they're going to vote for a Republican president. And it's always also a reason why they're going to vote for Republicans up and down the ballot, right? I know every time you guys allow me to join you on this podcast, I talk about how it could have been even worse. It's hard to imagine with the snowball effect we're seeing with higher prices that lead to this higher credit card debt, that lead to people being unable to purchase their first home. But Biden wanted to pass even more taxes and spending. Thankfully, House Republicans stopped the dozens of tax hikes, the trillions of additional dollars that Joe Biden wanted to spend. He fought tooth and nail to try and stop Republicans from calling back some of the unused pandemic relief funds in 2024 that state governments still hadn't used. So it could have been even worse. It's hard to imagine, but that's why we not only need to elect a Republican president, but we also need to remember the importance of these House and Senate majorities that we need to elect in November.
Yeah, and I think that household debt number, Madison, that you're talking about is such an important picture when we're talking about the finances of the American family. You have Joe Biden that went out there, spent $1.9 trillion, undermined American energy, increasing costs for families, fueling this inflation, making it hard to even afford necessities, bringing that savings rate down to multi-decade lows because people can no longer afford to save while also affording these necessities. Then on top of all of that, you have the Fed increasing interest rates to the highest level in decades to bring down inflation. And who does that hurt? The families with debt. So you have debt, credit card debt, reaching over $1 trillion for the first time in history to afford these increasing costs. And then you have the Fed increasing the interest rate on that credit card debt. It's a double whammy for American families who are just getting by. And it's all the result of Bidenomics. First, increasing those costs, sending families into debt. And then the Fed increasing those interest rates to combat inflation, which is then making it more expensive for families to finance that debt. It's really hurting these families and putting them in a hole that they really can't get out of.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you talk to people every single day, and I've talked to a lot of people recently here in my home state of Ohio that are just really struggling, and it really breaks your heart to hear the stories of what people are being forced to do, of the way they were living 4 years ago versus today. So many people seeing economic success in their lives, seeing great things going on in their jobs, and all that has really ended in so many areas across the country, especially here in the Midwest. And so we're seeing this, and of course, big cities being impacted in quite a different way in so many ways by the Biden administration. But again, people struggling, they didn't have to struggle, but the Biden administration doesn't seem to care. And I think that's been another trend. It's whether it be the economy, it's the border, no matter what issue we're talking about, the Biden administration and the Democrats do not seem to be concerned, or they say one thing and they do another. They don't make people feel safe, and they don't make people feel as if there's solution coming down the road. People feel that they're drowning out here, and the Biden administration is just letting them drown. They're doing nothing to fix the problem that's impacting people in this country, and that's quite frankly unacceptable, especially when they say one thing like, I'm going to secure the border, or we're going to do more to fix this, right? And then they don't. They don't do that. We're going to solve this problem. We're doing everything we can, and we know they're not doing everything that they can. That's frustrating to hear when nothing happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's so many examples of that happening. And also with talking about the gaslighting Americans, as Anna likes to say from the Biden administration, we're looking at people that are saying that the economy is not good, saying that the border is not good, and then Biden going out there and saying his policies are working. I think one of the biggest insults, and we've talked about it before, is East Palestine, Ohio. Joe Biden put out this video the other day after his visit, which was over a year after the toxic train derailment, almost a year after he promised to go. He put out this video about his visit, which I think only added insult to injury. If we could play at the beginning of this video.
We look out for one another. We leave no one behind, and we come back stronger than before. That's what you're doing here. That's what's happening right here in this community.
It's been a year since a Norfolk Southern freight train carrying hazardous chemicals derailed, releasing toxins into the environment and upending countless lives. For many, it's been a year of fear, uncertainty, and disarray.
So fear, uncertainty, and disarray. Madison, what's your reaction to that video?
When I watched this video, it's absolutely unbelievable. Yeah, it's been a year since the toxic train derailment here in Ohio. And it's also been a year since Joe Biden promised that he was going to come here. And it took him a year to do so, despite going to many foreign nations, states all across the country, and over 160 days of vacation. This guy is just simply unbelievable. He talks about leaving nobody behind. It's not just East Palestine, Ohio, that he's left people behind. He's left the average American behind every single day. We just talked about those costs. We've talked about inflation, Biden inflation specifically, and this guy has been leaving us all behind. He's a terrible president, and we deserve better, which is why everybody needs to get out and vote Republican in November, up and down the ticket. I mean, we had President Trump here in East Palestine, Ohio, when Joe Biden simply didn't show up, and he wasn't even president at that time.
Yeah, President Trump showing up almost right away. A few days later, he's showing up. And then Biden taking a year after spending all that time, like you said, on vacation. And Anna, to me, this is the big contrast to the Biden administration, where his priority is clearly going on vacation, going to these glitzy fundraisers, because that's what he spends his time doing. It's that old saying of, don't just listen to those words, show me with your actions. And Biden is showing the American people he doesn't care about them.
Right. In that video, they talk about the fear, uncertainty, and disarray, and maybe there would have been a lot less of that if we had actually a president who was invested in working on behalf of the American people. Like you said, instead, he's more focused on attending these glitzy fundraisers. I know he's in California this week, rubbing elbows with donors. After taking a year to visit East Palestine, Ohio. Meanwhile, we're seeing all of these crises going on with hostages still trapped in Gaza. There's so much going on, and meanwhile, this president is still more focused on attending these fundraisers, rubbing elbows with his donors, than actually working on behalf of the American people. It's absolutely absurd, and it should be an insult that he's trying to save face in this election year after completely checking out over the past 3 years.
Yeah, Madison, I think the fact that it's an election year can't be lost on the timing of this visit, because if it wasn't politically driven, he would have been there a long time ago if he prioritized the people there. And also the California fundraisers, it's not the first time that he's gone to California to fundraise. In fact, he went there multiple times instead of going to East Palestine, Ohio. So he goes on the fundraisers first, he goes on the fundraisers last. That's where he's spending his time, not with the people of East Palestine.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything you're seeing his team pushing right now is all election related. It's all related to making sure they can try to secure a re-election in November, which they won't. But that's what they're doing. And it's understandable. That's their job, to try to help President Biden. But at the same time, I mean, the guy's completely incapable. And what I think has been really interesting to watch over the past week, Tommy, since we last talked, is how the media has once again shifted back to trying to cover for Joe Biden after the Her report and that press conference in which he totally bombed. We saw some people starting to change their tune and be honest about Biden. Now you see these Democrats back out shamelessly shilling for President Biden, basically now saying, oh, this guy is so sharp. I was just around him. He's so sharp. He's so smart. He really knows what he's doing. He's thoughtful president. I mean, it's laughable. I don't know who they're lying to. Nobody believes that. It's absolutely incredible that they even have the nerve to get on television and say these lies when everybody with eyes and ears knows that this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's not sharp. I heard somebody on MSNBC, I think it was the other day, say he's at the top of his game. I mean, what a joke.
Yeah, I mean, does he have the worst case of being camera shy in history? That's the only explanation I can have for all these supposed examples of he being sharp and on it. None of them are ever on camera. Maybe they should release some of that. Maybe he should do a press conference to show it, but never on camera. The only times that we ever see him on camera are him embarrassing himself. And even in these produced videos the White House puts out, like the one we just saw, they have to cut and string these together with an enormous amount of edits. He barely goes a sentence without an edit. I mean, it's absolutely crazy what is going on.
Tommy, he's so sharp you can't see it or hear it.
Yeah,
he's just
right.
so
Like
sharp. It's not something you're able to even recognize.
Yeah, it's just like, why don't they put that on camera? If he's so sharp, if he's so with it, how about we put that on camera? It's almost like they're saying he's some sort of like mental gymnastics behind the scenes, but as soon as he gets in front of a camera, and that he has no idea what he's talking about.
Yeah, they're not going to put him on camera. They've clearly returned to the Biden basement strategy for a number of reasons. One reason is the fact that he doesn't know where he is on a given day. Another reason is that a lot of these produced events that they're putting on are getting disrupted by even fringe left members of his own party who he's trying to talk both sides of his mouth to. So, yeah, I don't think he's going to go on camera. I know that he's done fewer interviews than any president in history. He's done fewer press conferences than any president in the past 30 years. I think we're going to continue to see these Democrat operatives, again, continue to gaslight us, try and pretend like he's sharp, as, despite that really damning special counsel report that I think called him a well-meaning elderly man who's sympathetic. I mean, that's not what we want for our commander-in-chief.
With a poor memory.
Yeah,
right.
With a poor memory.
Yep.
I think a good example of how much this White House is going through, and talking about this Democrat operative, is going through hoops to protect Joe Biden, is how he gets onto Air Force One. And we've mentioned this before, but every single time other stories come out about this, it's flabbergasting to me. They make him use the short stairs, not the traditional big stairs that you see, a shorter set of stairs to get onto Air Force One because they're petrified of him tripping. He still almost trips every single time he gets onto the airplane. So they've stationed a Secret Service agent on the bottom of the airplane in the hopes of trying to help him if he trips. That is the lengths that this White House has to go through to protect Joe Biden, even when he's just walking up a set of stairs, let alone having him actually do those press conferences and those interviews. That's not where the energy of our White House should be, on protecting Joe Biden from tripping because they're petrified of it. The energy of the White House should be helping the American people. That shouldn't be controversial, but that's the reality we're living in under Joe Biden.
Yeah, it's really sad, honestly. And I think a lot of Americans can relate to this. A lot of us have loved ones where their mental acuity is struggling as they get older. And I think we can have empathy for that. But I think we also recognize that this is not who we want in the Oval Office when 6 hostages from America are still trapped in Gaza. This isn't who we want when we had that catastrophic Afghanistan withdrawal that resulted in 9,000 Americans left behind. This is not becoming of our commander-in-chief, and it's, of course, sad to watch, but we also have to recognize that we just can't afford this for the national security of our country, and as we continue to face crisis after crisis here at home.
Yeah, and Anna, you talk about, having family members who have maybe become elderly or have dementia. And as someone who's had a family member that had dementia and watched that progression, it's very difficult. And you would never want to put them out there in a position that they can't handle. And so a lot of people obviously assume that Joe Biden might be experiencing symptoms of dementia. That hasn't been confirmed by the White House. But if you were his family, at the very least, he's getting a lot older. He's not as capable as he used to be. And you'd think you'd want to protect him and not throw him out there the way they have. But it doesn't seem that anybody seems to care about that, even on a personal level.
Yeah, they're letting him run for president, but they're not letting him do any interviews. They're not letting him walk up the big stairs. They're not letting him hold any press conferences. They're not letting him hold very many events, but they're letting him run for president. It seems so the mental ability to do the job of president should come first, not trying to protect him from walking up a set of stairs. And I think it is borne out by his policies as well. We've mentioned this before in the past, but when you look at the devastation and the destruction that's being really experienced, especially by America's cities, it's really shocking. I mean, this is we're seeing video after video after video of cities struggling under Democrat policies, from Joe Biden all the way down to the mayor's office. One of these examples, a really powerful example, really disturbing example, was another migrant shelter. This is really shocking video. We have that here, but if we could play that video. And this was after that famous example of the New York City cops, or infamous example rather, of the New York City cops being beaten by migrants, the people arrested, accused of that crime, then released by Alvin Bragg onto the street, back to a taxpayer-funded shelter. And Madison, you've touched on this before in terms of the different priorities of these Democrat mayors. That while this is happening, Eric Adams is proposing giving $10,000 to illegal immigrants without any ID or fraud prevention. The mixed priorities, the misplaced priorities is so acute here. It's really disturbing and shows why Democrat policies are failing massively.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And they're saying that the justification of spending over $50 million on this pilot program is that they're going to save potentially $7 million in food that would have otherwise been thrown away that they're giving to the migrants. It's just totally unacceptable. I'm sick of them putting migrants over Americans. Put Americans first. Take care of the people who elected you to be in the position to be their representative, whether that be a mayor, a congressperson, or any other local, state, or federal elected official. We want people working for us, protecting Americans, and doing the right thing. And this simply has not been the right thing. You cannot let millions of people pour over the border without any ID, no idea who they are, no idea if they're a danger to us or to our families or to our communities, and say it's okay. 7.2 million people since Biden took office. That's more than the population in 36 states in this country. I mean, it's just unbelievable. You wouldn't have believed it if someone told you this 10 years ago, that this was happening today. But the reality is this is where we are. And we need people who are doing a better job to protect us. And of course, our men and women in blue as well.
Yeah, you break the law, according to Democrats, enter this country illegally, and they give you $10,000. I mean, that is so warped when it comes to solving this crisis.
On a credit card that you can literally spend on anything, because they have no way to know if you're who you say you are or if you're doing what you say you're supposed to do with it. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. And I think, Madison, you brought up a good point about protecting police officers as well, because I think one of the parts of this that doesn't get talked about enough, especially by the mainstream media, is the fact that it's the border policies, but it's also the soft on crime Democrat policies as well.
That's right.
The reason why the migrants that were accused of beating that New York City police officer were released back onto the street was because of the cashless bail policy in New York. It's a perfect storm of incompetence, of dangerous policies. I even hesitate to say incompetence because this is done on purpose by a lot of Democrats.
Yeah, like you're saying, I mean, Democrat policies really set the stage for these tragedies that are happening. I know that New York Governor Kathy Hochul has been an advocate for cashless bail. She's supported DAs who refuse to enforce the law. And on top of that, you have these sanctuary city policies that are bringing in these unvetted migrants. Let's not forget that we already know 150 migrants were apprehended trying to cross the border who were on the terror watch list last year. And we don't know how many more got away, right? So it really is, like you're saying, a perfect storm of all of these terrible Democrat policies that have set the table ultimately for Americans to be less safe in border states and in all states, because every state is a border state in Joe Biden's America.
Yep, we've seen it in Portland, we've seen it in Chicago, we're seeing it in New York City, we've seen it in Washington, D.C. Look across the country, there's one common denominator. Cities that are Democrat run are failing. The soft on crime policies of the Democrats have not worked. They have not worked for years, and they will not work moving forward. We're a nation of laws. We need law and order in our cities, and only Republican leadership and leadership from the top can help fix this problem. Under President Trump, we saw things be better than they are today, and we will see that turn around as well next year.
Yeah, I think, Madison, you're right to point out that this is a national problem. In Washington, D.C., is such a powerful example of Democrat policies failing. You have the councilman, I think we actually have this clip as well, the councilman in D.C. denying that the crime crisis exists in D.C. Astonishing incompetence, if we could play that clip.
I know this belies the common belief, and when it comes to crime, how people feel is important. But there is not a crime crisis in Washington, D.C.
Meanwhile, homicides are skyrocketing, carjacking rates are skyrocketing, crime is skyrocketing across the city. And to Madison, your point about this being a national problem, over 170 House Democrats voted to defend a law that would lower penalties for violent crimes like murders, sexual offenses, thefts, carjackings. Even as this crime crisis is hitting D.C., House Democrats voted to protect a law to lower penalties for criminals. Democrats don't care about solving this. They only want to make it worse. At least that's the effect of their policies.
No, and that's why they support things like cashless bail. They continue to support soft on crime policies. And the reality is this has been a problem for a very long time when it comes to so many people who are representing us not understanding the issues that are facing everyday Americans, because they in so many ways are insulated from those issues. They don't want us to have guns, but they have security of their own, and oftentimes private security. Hillary Clinton was a good example of that. So they want to have two different standards for how they're protected and how their families are treated versus how we're protected and how our families are treated. That cannot be the case. We need to have one justice for all. Everybody should be held to the same standards. And that's not what we see in this country anymore. And that's not the country that our founding fathers envisioned for us.
Yeah, and I think the hypocrisy of defund the police Democrats, like Madison was just saying, wanting to defund the police even as crime rates are skyrocketing, voting to defend criminal codes that lower penalties for violent criminals, but then spending tens of thousands of dollars on their own security because they don't feel safe in the cities that they're creating, in the cities where their policies are having these impacts of increasing violent crime and making everybody less safe.
Yeah, it's the same rules for thee, not for me MO that we've seen from Democrats all along. We see it right now on these crime policies. We saw it during COVID when you had Nancy Pelosi going to get her hair done when all businesses in California were shut down. Yeah, it's absolutely classic for them. And it's absolutely delusional. I remember Karine Jean-Pierre actually went up on the podium and bragged about some of those statistics about what that horrific DC crime law does. And we even have here in DC, a DC council member, Charles Allen, being recalled over these soft on crime policies. So they are absolutely out of touch on reality, which is crazy because, I mean, I don't understand how they can continue to push these soft on crime, pro-criminal policies when clearly Americans overwhelmingly reject them and want to feel safe in their communities.
Yeah, I mean, it's so many examples of this happening with this hypocrisy. Like you mentioned, COVID, defund the police, how out of touch they are with this crime that is devastating America's cities. Example after example after example of this. And I still just can't get out of my mind that in Joe Biden and Democrats America, you can illegally cross the border, get given $10,000 on a credit card without ID, get accused of beating a police officer, get released from jail, and then go back to a taxpayer-funded shelter at the same time that Americans are being locked out of schools. I mean, that is Democrats America in a nutshell. And it's the direct, predictable result of their policies that they were warned about, and yet they refuse to reverse. It needs to end, and we need to elect Republicans to make it stop.
Yeah, Joe Biden's America is a complete and total nightmare. It's a horror that we don't deserve to be living under. You look back 4 years ago, Trump's America was so very different. Things were prosperous. Businesses were thriving. Communities were thriving. People were thriving. That's the America we need to get back to, and we will. And it only takes change in leadership and hard work by those elected representatives. And that's what we need to have, whether that be in the White House, in the House, in the Senate, across the country, in state and local offices. This is the change and the shift we have to see. Republican cities are much better off right now than Democrat cities. That's the perfect example when it comes to the economy, crime, pretty much anything, as to why you should elect Republicans. These aren't partisan issues, guys. We're talking about things like the border. We're talking about things like money coming into your household, coming into your community, coming into your pockets every single day. And the reality is people trust Republicans over Democrats on those issues that matter most. There's other issues we may disagree on, but everybody out there listening, if you're not already voting Republican, you should be. We need every single person to vote Republican in November, every independent that's unhappy with the direction of the country, if you want to see a change.
Exactly. That's why Bank Your Vote's also so important. We talk about it every week. BankYourVote.com, making that pledge to vote early to make sure that we're holding Democrats accountable. Just like Madison said, if you believe in law enforcement, if you believe in a strong economy, that's why people are leaving Democrat cities in droves, leaving Democrat states and going to Republican ones. People are voting with their feet. We need to also vote on the ballot box. That's why it's so important. Thank you, Anna, Madison, for another great week talking about the issues. This has been the Republican Rundown. We'll be back next week.